Good evening to all of you. It's obviously great to see so many faces right now clocking at 93 at 7 p.m. on weekend in India. So I'm sure most of you over here, or perhaps all of you over here, are interested in what Saudi Arabia brings to the table for most of us here. So without any further ado, my introduction has already been made. So I'll jump into the presentation. Um, so Well, I had a quick discussion with the organizers, and I thought, instead of just restricting it purely to power segment and the HVAC segment, we'll speak in general about all the opportunities, by and large, which Saudi Arabia presents. I will, of course, be addressing also the opportunities related to the power and the HVAC segment, but for the benefit of, all the 93 people and perhaps clocking more than 100 in a few minutes, I think it is in the best interest that we speak by and large of the opportunities which Saudi Arabia presents. So quickly, let's jump in the myths. I'm sure when most people, previously at least, when people would hear about Saudi Arabia, they think it's a land of deserts, it's a land of Bedouins, not much of progress, not much of development. But of course, things have changed over the few years. If you have seen Saudi Arabia of the 1980s and you compare that to the 2000s and the 2020s, the mammoth development is just incredibly phenomenal. So let me take you through what are the key economic indicators based on which I do make this comment that Saudi Arabia is the new place of investments, opportunities, and perhaps the new dreamland, as most people might consider it to be. When you compare Saudi Arabia's global growth, right, just in 2023, compared to the global growth, it was higher by 1.1%, whereas the global average was about 3.2% of GDP growth. GDP per capita increased from 16,500 USD to 24,800 as of 2024, which is massive. And as we speak about 2025, okay, that has to be corrected. The projected growth for 2026 is about 4.2%. Inflation rate has remained almost the same at 3.1%, which is again far, far less when you compare it to several other countries across the globe. Unemployment at this point stands at 9.6%, but we do have other opportunities which are coming up, which is going to be bridging the gap. And if we are to follow the news and the updates which we get, Saudi Arabia established or aims to bring down that unemployment rate by less than 4% by 2030. And the FDI, the foreign development investments in Saudi Arabia as of 2023 alone was 32.2 billion. Now I'm going to put things a little in perspective. This is basically just a general graph showing the GDP growth and what have you. 2020 obviously was a dip for the entire globe due to the coronavirus, but then they bounced back at a mammoth 4.2%. Now, for a comparative, why are we saying Saudi Arabia is the next place to invest? Why is Saudi Arabia the land of opportunities? Now, the countries that I've listed here, right, are essentially the countries, which includes India, China, US, and Germany, are countries which is known for opportunities, which is known for business development and engineering opportunities and what have you. Amongst that, it may at the moment, looking at this table, appear like Saudi Arabia is growing only at 4.3% when you compare it to the other countries. However, when you do compare it to countries like US, Germany, Saudi Arabia is at much higher GDP growth rate. Now, in terms of FDI, again, when you compare it to the other countries, India, China, US, Germany, it may appear like $32.2 billion is far too low. But now, let me zoom out and show you how it is like in the Middle East region, right? The Gulf region. And then you would realize why 32.2 in comparison to the superpowers of the world might look small. But when you look at the Gulf region, people who believe that UAE, for instance, is a lot more, is a place with a lot more foreign development and investments, you'll realize that it is quite far away when it is compared to Saudi Arabia. The amount of foreign development investments in Saudi Arabia is almost percent higher as compared to UAE alone. The growth rate in Saudi Arabia is, averaging the Gulf, which is 4.3%, which is phenomenal. Now, moving forward, again, FDI, I don't want to get too much into the details of the FDI over here because I have something to share with you in the next few slides. The Vision 2030, which a lot of people really talk about, it might appear like a fancy little thing, which, you see everywhere here and there, that Vision 2030, Saudi Arabia is transforming. To understand the kind of investment which is going into the Vision 2030, it is unbelievable. Looking at of $800 billion of investment for the Vision 2030. Now, what does Vision 2030 have? I'm going to get to that in just a bit, right? How Saudi Arabia plans to get this Vision 2030 accomplished, and how it tries to put itself on the map is primarily through these four sectors. Now, one might have not imagined that Saudi Arabia would probably be leading the pack in terms of AI, but Saudi Arabia is right now one of the leading developers of AI. In addition to that, we've got tourism industry, which, if anybody here is 20, 30 years, tourism in Saudi Arabia essentially just meant, the pilgrimage, Hajj, Umrah, and that was it. But now Saudi Arabia is positioning itself to be a touristic location with Neom, Al Ula, and several other places, Riyadh seasons, Jeddah seasons, and the kind of events which Saudi Arabia is putting up. In fact, I think a few days back we had the three Khans, the Bollywood was here. So Saudi Arabia is breaking the shackles of what people used to think of, and tourism is at the forefront of it. And if we are going to go with the objectives of the prince, he wants Saudi Arabia to be the hub of tourism in the Middle East, not just in the Gulf for that matter. And if we are to look at the projected trends, very soon you will see Saudi Arabia overtaking UAE in terms of tourism. Second, the renewable energy. Again, the myth or the idea which surrounds Saudi Arabia is that it's an oil-driven country, it's all about oil, 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 but that's not the case. Now, when we speak about the renewable energy, Saudi Arabia plans to move 50% of its energy development or energy generation to renewable energy, which brings about $50 billion worth of investments. Now, to give you a little perspective in terms of numbers, at the moment, Saudi Arabia depends heavily on gas and oil. But as of 2030, we can expect about 64 gigawatts of energy coming in from gas, 33 from oil, and a whooping 60 gigawatts from renewable sources. So essentially what that means for people across the globe is that renewable energy segment is a place where you are to look out for opportunities. Even now, as we speak, the kind of investments happening in renewable energy in the solar front, the nuclear front as well, is staggering. So there's a lot of business opportunities when you talk about renewable energy. And moving on to technology, as I just mentioned, Saudi Arabia is planning to be on the forefront of AI. And if you might recollect, maybe 2 years or 3 years ago, the first AI robotic lady was introduced here in Saudi Arabia, where the world was watching. Lastly, of course, the healthcare. Those of you who've been to UK, US, Canada, etc., you might be aware that while the healthcare facilities in these countries from the outward looks really fancy and great, but the truth of the matter on to healthcare, there is absolutely no match when it comes down to GCC. You get your appointments in time, you have everything happening like a smooth machine. And Saudi Arabia plans to take that a step forward with collaborations coming in from Belgium, from Germany, from USA, from Canada. The amount of investments which are coming in terms of healthcare, and that by healthcare I do not just mean setting up hospitals or setting up more healthcare centers. No. While that is the plan, you will see a massive boost of hospitals and healthcare facilities coming up. Saudi Arabia is also focusing on developing local manufacturing capabilities for healthcare. Now, I work with a company called Engr, where we do product testing and certifications. And I can tell you the number of inquiries that we handle in terms of product testing and certifications for local healthcare products. It could be basic X-ray machines, it could be hospital beds which are automated. There is a lot of potential when it comes down to the healthcare segment as well, not just with establishments, but also in terms of product manufacturing. So I'll move on to the next slide, which is the items which lead to why Saudi Arabia is going to be where it is, right? Mega projects and several events being hosted, and of course development and nourishment of local talent, which is essentially an objective to reduce the unemployment rate from what it is, which is at 9.3 to perhaps below 5% by 2030. What are the mega projects? Needless to say, I think a lot of you know the projects which are happening in Saudi Arabia, right? We have the the Neom project, the Al Ula, the King Salman Park. King Salman Park is one of the fastest project that I think I've seen in Riyadh. I've seen the progress of King Salman Park. It's just absolutely phenomenal. Khidya being a sports city, Trojena is, something which is out of the world, kind of a ski resort which they're trying to prepare in a desert country. So the projects which are coming up in Saudi Arabia just give out so much of opportunities in terms of business, business development for people sitting outside of Saudi Arabia. Now, while you do have a lot of opportunities while being in India, while being perhaps outside of Saudi Arabia, well, in my opinion, seeing the trend which follows, the localization concept which has come into be, which is essentially to reduce the unemployment rate, to engage more people, to make Saudi Arabia a more employable country, the route forward, which most people are looking at, is local manufacturing. So you will see a lot of these projects insist on local manufacturing. So if you're trying to explore opportunity in Saudi Arabia, one of the things that I would recommend that you do is try to set up a local facility, be it a manufacturing plant. Probably need to collaborate with somebody, putting up a service company, whatsoever it might be. I would recommend you consider having a local facility, because over the last 5 years, the requirement of localization and the insistence of localization has increased. Now, this obviously does not mean that you, as a foreign expatriate or a foreign trader or a foreign company, will not get any share. No. I mean, if you have a unique product, if you are able to fit into the requirements of these massive projects, for sure. And now, you might also wonder that, okay, there are so many projects, there's so many opportunities, so the market is most likely going to get flooded, it is most likely going to get full. But that's the entire beauty of the opportunities which Saudi Arabia is presenting at the moment, where there are so many opportunities that there is a piece of cake for absolutely every single person. If you have a product which can be it a simple plastic product to an extremely complicated turbine, for instance, you have opportunities. Now, how you get into and win these opportunities depends on how well you're able to localize, how well you're able to cater to the requirements, right? How well you're able to provide for the specifications of Saudi Arabia. Now, speaking of specifications and opportunities, see, one of the things that I was originally supposed to be presenting was related to HVAC, the heating, ventilation, and air conditioning systems in the region. Now, a fun fact is that uh, in the Gulf region, the the majority share of HVAC, be it servicing or manufacturing, is with Saudi Arabia. And when I say majority share, I do not mean by about, say, 10%, 20%, because, Gulf region, the MENA region, Middle East and North Africa, is a massive region. But despite it being a massive region, Saudi Arabia has 45% of the HVAC share. So if you are from the HVAC industry, you can imagine the kind of potential which Saudi Arabia brings. And obviously, because of the kind of terrain that it is a hot region. So from the beginning, there was always growth for HVAC in the region. In fact, to the point that while the entire GCC's CAGR is about 5.3%, Saudi Arabia CAGR in the HVAC segment alone is about 8%, right? So that gives you an insight on how much of HVAC developments and HVAC requirement and opportunities are there in the region. Now, to enumerate to you, it might look all okay, many opportunities, many items, but what are they? So I've tried to put on a list of a few mega projects, which essentially show you where you have what. So you have the Jeddah Tower, which is supposed to be one of the world's, in fact, at the moment, it is poised to be the world's tallest skyscraper, which is under construction. So once that happens, essentially what happens is, Saudi Arabia then owns its own Burj Khalifa, or in fact, a bigger one. So you do expect tourism coming in. And as the project progresses, the amount of work which goes in, be it constructional, be it HVAC, be it furnitures as well, be it absolutely anything that you can think about, it is going to be required. And that is just one project. If you see the list of the projects that I've presented, you will see that the Jeddah Tower is perhaps the lowest investment in this list, which is at 1.23 billion. You will see you have Mokab, which is the Murabba project, the square project in the downtown of Riyadh, which is at a whooping 500 billion US dollars, right? So when you can see the kind of investment which is coming in, the more the investment, it's always more the opportunities, right? So I don't want to spend or dwell too much onto all the items. I'm happy for you to take a screenshot of it because uh, these are just a few of the mega projects. Because I want to also swiftly move on to the other items as we're running a little short on time, right? If you do have any questions, please feel free to put it on the chat box. I will have a look at it and I will try to address it for you, right? I'm sure you've heard about Sindala, the luxury resorts which are coming up in Saudi Arabia, where once we thought, again, a Bedouin island or Bedouin land, now we have a luxury resort coming up. People from across the globe are now considering Saudi Arabia to be the touristic destination. You have other utility projects like courses and entertainment and sports complex. The King Salman Park was a recreational park. Uh, several. I mean, these are just the tip of the iceberg, really. And again, these are the mega ones. So you've got many, several smaller projects along the way. Now, in addition to this, Saudi Arabia is positioning itself to host events. Now, what kind of events? As I mentioned to you at a few slides back, Saudi Arabia is positioning itself to be leading the pack of wolves, for example, in the Middle East. So in terms of AI. So they are hosting the Global AI Summit. We're having the Davos, which is coming up in the desert. We're having the World Cup, which was, treated with pride in Qatar just a few years back, and now it's going to be in Saudi Arabia very soon. We have MISC, which is a massive event which has been happening over the last few years, where it positions all the technological advancements. In a few years, I do assume that MISC and related events will take over events like GITEX, like Middle East Energy Exhibition, some of the biggest events which do happen in the UAE at the moment is likely to move to Saudi Arabia. It's not only about projects. Again, we were looking at tourism as such. So we have fashion shows coming up. We have award ceremonies, award shows coming up, Formula One racing, and what have you. So essentially, Saudi Arabia is breaking the bubble of what people used to think, shattering beliefs that no, Saudi Arabia cannot do one, two, three, four, and anything and everything that you thought Saudi Arabia may not do, Saudi Arabia is venturing into it. Right? This is the time to invest. This is a time to reap the benefits of being in Saudi Arabia, working with the Saudi Arabian projects. Right. So I've already told you about the World Cup. So finally, one of the things which Saudi Arabia is taking a lot of pride in, and rightly so, is the Expo 2030. And unfortunately for UAE, when Expo 2020 was happening, coronavirus practically wiped it off and it had to move to 2021. But it was massive. Anybody who's been to Expo 2020 in Dubai will acknowledge that it was absolutely massive. And that was with an investment of $20 billion, right? Now imagine what you can expect with an investment of $80 billion, right? And that again is the opportunity which Saudi Arabia presents for you. Again, what can you do over here? Anything that you can provide is sellable in Saudi Arabia. No matter what your product is, it is sellable in Saudi Arabia. Of course, so long as it meets quality standards, because Saudi Arabia does not compromise on the quality standards, right? So again, quickly, this is just a quick, let's say, a snapshot about the investments and the revenue which has been coming in, comparing it to UAE versus KSA. You will see that as of 2025, the investments coming into UAE is about $70 billion, whereas in Saudi Arabia, it's about $85 billion. And the revenue, like, as you can clearly see, as of 2025, the projected revenue from this 70 billion investment is about $500 billion, whereas Saudi Arabia is about at $650 billion. And that number is just going to keep increasing, at least for the foreseeable future. We do know that Saudi Arabia is going to have a massive revenue growth. And anywhere that there is revenue growth and you're part of that revenue growth, you make your own revenue, right? Lastly, the talent pool, talent opportunities. So for those of us who are looking for, opportunities in terms of jobs and not just business, like I mentioned, through and through, we have tourism coming in. We've got engineering activities. HVAC is booming in the region. Power segment is booming. People are moving from oil and gas to renewable energies. So we expect about 10 million new jobs in by 2030 in Saudi Arabia. I've just mentioned a few of them over here, like about NEOM is one of those projects which is expected to employ 1.25 million employees. Now, when I say NEOM 1.25 million, obviously this does not mean just the NEOM company, but the project in itself entails so many recruitments. So that's a lot of job opportunities which come along the way. In terms of engineering opportunities, like I said, we've got NEOM, the Qidya, Red Sea project, Jeddah Tower, Amala Tower. You've got several opportunities where you have engineering, and that's not just engineering in terms of, say, electrical or mechanical or one or two. The engineering opportunities are across all engineering fields. Like, again, a quick snapshot over here about the kind of engineering and opportunities that entail the Saudi Arabian landscape, right? I do not want to get too much into the numbers because I'm probably running very close to my closing time, which is, I think, about 3 minutes left to go. Right. So these are engineering opportunities that you do have. The line project, of course, you've got other renewable projects, transportation. You have, Lucid has put up their plant over here, and they've successfully started manufacturing electric cars. You do know about the other investments coming in for car manufacturers in the region. There are talks with, several, reputed manufacturers of the region. I believe there are Korean companies and there are American companies who are in discussions to bring in manufacturing plants within the region, within Kingdom. So again, you have opportunities there as well. I, again, do not want to go into all the details over here. These are primarily related to engineering opportunities. As I said, the original presentation was supposed to be revolving around power and HVAC, which is more to do with engineering. And hence I thought that, just put these things for you. So you are free to take a quick screenshot of that if you like. I mean, I'm trying to go as fast as I can for a simple reason that there is just so much that Saudi Arabia offers that really it's difficult for me to put everything within 20 minutes. And that just speaks volumes about the kind of opportunities which Saudi Arabia has, right? I would like to just briefly talk about the India and Saudi Arabian ties and the kind of collaborations that are happening between the two countries. In the energy segment, we have corporations happening between the Indian Oil Corporation and Saudi Aramco, where there's a combined investment of nearly 44 billion US dollars. Like infrastructure, we've got companies like L&T, we've got companies like Shapurji Palanji, who was, his name, Shapurji Palanji, who is into the infrastructural development. Several combined joint projects are happening. In fact, a few are not even publicly listed. There, if you discuss with the embassies, they will give you a lot of information about the kind of cooperations happening. Imagine
Brother
there
Faisal.
is at the moment, yeah.
Yes. Brother Faisal, we are already 3 minutes past 20 minutes actually, and we started
Okay,
late also.
so
So I would
give me
request to
like
my
2 minutes and I will finish this. I'm at the end, right? So I quickly just go through this. Like I said, you can take a screenshot. Basically, it talks about the sector and what kind of opportunities avail. So this entire presentation is not made out of my own imagination, right? These are the sources. If you'd like, please feel free to go through the sources. And with that, I think, what they say in UAE, Habibi, come to Dubai, and now it's full. I'm sure you're seeing videos of people saying, go back. But Saudi Arabia is going to open you with open arms with all the opportunities that it presents. With that, thank you all very much and appreciate you giving your ears to me. Thank you. If you have questions, I'm happy to answer them on chat. Thank you.